good morning. It's Tuesday. It is day 2 of the 5-day crash course on healing from mystery illnesses. I'm super excited because I'm going to be able to get started on my passion, and today we're going to be talking about silent killer number 1. Now, if you're just joining us and you don't already know me, my name is Kara Cates. I am a spiritual integrative healer. I'm a corrective exercise specialist and a certified biofeedback technician. And I started in the health and fitness industry when I was 13, really. I hired my own trainer. I had trainers all through high school. I went to Arizona State for kinesiology and exercise science. I got my certification from the National Academy of Sports Medicine, which is one of the most recognized personal trainer certifications in the country. And from there, I decided to work solely on injury prevention. And I work with chiropractors and personal trainers and physical therapists so that I can identify pain, where it's coming from, and treat it from the origin of the problem and not just the symptoms. 2 years ago, I started doing biofeedback, which is an energetic frequency training. And that is, we can work for everything from stress to past emotions, repressed emotions, organs, acumeridians, you name it, physical symptoms, emotional symptoms, spiritual symptoms. And that was really when I started getting into integrative healing. So learning how the body heals from the origin of the problem, whether it's a repressed emotion or something that we have a virus or bacteria hidden inside our body. So I've been doing that. I've been in the health and fitness industry for 15 years now. So today's video, the silent killer number 2, is near and dear to my heart because I have experienced this for probably about the last 10 years. I've been conscious of this, and I've been working on it, and I've been educating others on it as well. So we talked about stress yesterday in the video a little bit. We touched on it a little bit. We touched on the fight or flight response. We touched on the parasympathetic nervous system. So today we're going to dive a little bit deeper because I really want you guys to understand how much of a role stress plays in our health. So it's definitely something that can't be measured by doctors. If you are having anxiety, or if you are stressed out, or if your body is taxed, your adrenals are taxed, typically if you go to your general practitioner, they don't have a test for stress. Say, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, you're at a 10, and these are all the effects it's having on your body. They don't have any way to measure that. They can do a stress test for your heart, see how much stress your heart is under physical conditions. But unfortunately, there's really no way to see how your adrenals are performing, how your parasympathetic nervous system is turning on, or if it's even turning on at all. And so we're going to dive into a little bit of that today. So there are multiple types of stressors, and some of them are pretty obvious, but we don't pay attention to all of them. And the ones that are obvious are definitely emotional stress, physical stress on our body, whether we're working out to exhaustion, or we're overworking out, or we're taxing our body with food poor choices. Then you also have relationship stress, stress from work, whether you're unsure about your job, whether you're unsure about your future. You also have food stress. You have injury stress if you're dealing with a shoulder pain, and that shoulder pain is constantly on your mind and it's taking over your thoughts, or your back is bothering you. The emotions that we associate with our injuries create more stress than the injury alone. Pollution, electromagnetic frequencies, electromagnetic frequencies come off of cell phone batteries, cell phone towers. Radiation, that's another invisible stressor that we don't pay attention to. Microwaves, fluorescent bulbs put off a certain type of frequency. And then the other stress too that I talk about with a lot of my biofeedback clients that most people don't understand is actually empathic stress. And empathic stress, we touched on this a little bit yesterday, is stress that's not really yours. So if you're empathic and you're really sensitive to other people's emotions, chances are you're going to recognize that emotion, but you're going to think it's your own, and it's not always. And so if you are empathic, then you can be absorbing stress from other people. And where this shows up the most is in mothers. So if you are a mother of a couple, you have 2 or 3 children, maybe they grow up and they move out. If you're constantly worried about your daughter's situation, your daughter's in a bad relationship and you're worried about her, or your son just had a really bad breakup and he's upstairs bawling his eyes out, you're empathic, and you're feeling their emotions. And so when we do biofeedback, sometimes these emotions come up and they're like, well, that's not me. I don't have this emotion at all. But it can be directly related to somebody that you're close to and that you have a lot of energy invested in. So there's another type of more on the spiritual side of stress, but it's what we call empathic stress. So, and then, so I want to try to keep this as organized as possible because the information in today's video is pretty intense for most people. And so I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. And the first thing that I want to talk about is the stress response. Now, the stress response, and the other thing too, if you guys have questions, feel free to go ahead and post them in the comments. I'm going to try to get to some at the end of the day. But first of all, I want to talk about the stress response. So the stress response was supposed to be for, and we talked about this a little yesterday, the fight or flight response. If we, back in the hunter and gathering days, we had to hunt for our own food. So the reality of it was that once a week, once every 10 days or whatever, we would experience this survival mode response where we would all of a sudden be chased by a lion. Now there's a couple things that happen when you receive a stress or you perceive a stress threat. And I don't want to get too deep in this, and you don't necessarily need to know all of this, but I do, because when I do biofeedback and I'm testing you for stress hormones, we need to make sure that we know which hormones are out of balance. So this is a way for me to test how stressed you are. So when you perceive a threat, your hypothalamus recognizes that as a threat. Your hypothalamus is a gland right behind your nose. It's kind of like right back on your brain. The hypothalamus releases CRH, which is a stress hormone, which sends a signal to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland releases ACTH, which goes down to your adrenals. And people have heard of adrenal fatigue and adrenal failure, and we'll get to that. But the adrenals then release cortisol and adrenaline. Now, what happens when you release cortisol and adrenaline is this physical response of your body to be able to provide you with the energy and the mechanisms needed for survival. So jump higher, run faster, breathe deeper. And when that happens, normally we're supposed to actually use that energy. We're supposed to be running or jumping or lifting a car off of somebody, right? But how many times have you perceived a threat? Maybe it's road rage, or maybe it's an argument you had with your spouse, or your kids pissed you off, or whatever. But you don't do anything with it. You just kind of sit there. And your body doesn't end up utilizing all of the hormones that it just released, the cortisol and the adrenaline. And I want to stay on topic because I'm going to come back to this and how it affects you later. But when you experience that response, it creates this response inside your body that constricts your blood vessels, increases your heart rate, increases your blood pressure. It dilates your bronchioles so that you can get more airflow into your lungs. Missing one. Oh, and your muscles contract. So if you think about this, well, once a week, that's not bad, right? But how many stressors do you experience on a weekly basis? How many stressors do you experience on a daily basis? So let's just say, and here's my favorite, is the hypothetical thinker, right? So I'll use somebody as an example. But, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and they're like, yeah, well, if this happens, then I'm going to say this to them, and then they're going to say that to me, and then I'm going to come back with blah, 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 blah. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, really? Really? And then what? And then what? And I'm listening, and I'm like, you're creating this hypothetical situation that hasn't even happened yet, and you're getting yourself worked up, and you're creating this stress response inside your body that's utilizing all these, resources and creating all these hormones, but you don't even know that that's going to happen, and you don't even know that it will happen. And what if they just say, okay, then you just got yourself all worked up for nothing, right? So these hypothetical situations can create stress responses. So yesterday I asked you guys to think about your stress responses throughout the day to see how many stressors you're actually experiencing and what your reaction is to those stressors. So there's all these processes that happen inside our body when we perceive a threat. And that threat can be something so simple as being late for work. It can be something so simple as telling your son 5 times to get his shoes on, and he still hasn't done it. And finally, like, get your freaking shoes on, and you just want to choke him, right? No? Nobody else ever feels like that? Okay, well, I do. So the reality of it is we are experiencing these fight or flight states, survival mode states, multiple times a day. And depending on your environment, depending on your foods, depending on your situation, there's a whole bunch of variables that are going to determine how many times you experience those stress responses throughout the day. And this is kind of off topic with my notes, but I just want to say that when you experience stress on a regular basis, it actually kills a portion of your brain off. It starts to deteriorate your brain cells so that when you need to handle stress, you can't handle stress as well. So the problem isn't that you just don't handle stress well or you think that you don't handle stress well. It's actually a physical symptom of being stressed too much. So the reality of it is it's not anything that you're doing wrong. It's a depletion of vitamins and minerals in your brain, which we'll talk about later, that makes you incapable of processing stress, which is why it's so dangerous, because we just think it's in our head, or we think, oh, I don't handle stress well. It's not your fault. It literally is a sickness, okay? So it's not a big deal if we experience stress once a week or once every 10 days or even, once a day. But the problem is when the stressors are in excess, when it's all day, every day, and we can't do anything about it, we can't even handle it properly, that's when it starts to deplete our body of the resources that it uses. So let's think about all the way back to our childhood, okay? So there are hundreds and thousands of different types of stressors. But what I want you to recognize is I want you to look at the pattern. So yesterday I asked you guys to do a timeline, and if you didn't get the email, it was too large to send, so if you didn't have Google Drive, it wouldn't allow you to open it. So what I did was I just actually posted it into the files tab of this group, and I can show you how to do that if you need it. But it's basically a sickness and a stress timeline. And in that timeline, I asked you to write down stressors in your life and then sicknesses in your life. So if we go back all the way back to childhood, we can think about times where we moved. We can think about divorces, if there was any type of sexual abuse, if there was times where you had experienced breakups with a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You can look at sicknesses. If you broke your arm, you broke your leg. If you had your parents argued a lot, if you had bullying in school, these are all stressors that would have affected you as a child. And depending on how high those stress levels were, that would start to diminish your ability to handle stress as an adult. There are also studies that show that depending on how nurturing your mother was, if you grew up in a family where your mother was extremely nurturing, she was a caretaker, she loved you, she was coddling you all the time, she loved you, that raises your ability to handle stress. If you grew up in a family where your mother was not nurturing, where she, it was like, suck it up, do better, you're fine, get up, brush off. If you weren't nurtured enough as a child, then your ability to handle stress decreases. And there are scientific studies that show that, which was always really interesting to me. And then you get into the teenage years, and then the teenage years, you have the boyfriends and the pressure of, and girlfriends too, if there's any guys in here, but then you have the pressures of, sex, and that time comes along, and then maybe there's bullying in there, maybe there's acne, some self-confidence issues. And then we go to college, and then we move, and we're free, and then we have all these other sets of issues like responsibilities, and maybe drugs, and bad food choices, and partying, and then you still have that body image, self-confidence issue. And the stressors build and build throughout the course of your life. So depending on how stressed you were as a child and as a teenager, that's going to affect how you handle your stressors as an adult. And it's really, it's kind of a neat journey if you're on the path of self-discovery and trying to heal and finding out where some of these illnesses might be coming from. I think one of my favorite things when I do biofeedback is when it basically communicates with your subconscious. So when your subconscious mind says that there's a lot of anger or there's a lot of grief, and you haven't recognized that you haven't really resolved that anger yet from being bullied when you were 10 or 12 or 13 or whatever. And all of a sudden, all these things start to surface, like your liver and your gallbladder and all these health conditions because of you repressing that anger. And so it's really neat to kind of dive into that. I think it's really neat and exciting to dive into that and really try to get to the bottom of why you feel this way, why your body is acting a certain way. And so when we think about, I'm laughing at my notes because I wrote on my notes like the childhood stress, the teen, and then college, young adulthood. And then I wrote adulthood, and I wrote, holy shit. Because, as an adult, and depending on how your childhood was, we have so many stressors as an adult, just adulting a period, right? We've got to take care of the kids. We've got to make sure our spouse is happy. We've got to take care of the house, the yard, the bills, the money, the work, you name it. Holy shit, right? So there's this cycle, and there's this pattern, and there's this stress response system that your body goes through every time you experience stress. And we call it the HPA axis. And the HPA axis is the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal glands. And those are the three that will contribute to your stress levels, your cortisol levels, inability to lose weight. Here's the other thing. I don't know if I have this in my notes to talk about later, but I'm going to tell you right now. Oh, it's next. Woohoo! When you have excess cortisol and excess adrenaline in your body, it has to go through your liver and your kidney for processing if you don't utilize it. So if you have a stressor and then all of a sudden you like run or jumping jacks or you squat or whatever and you get that energy out, then your body will utilize that energy. However, if you don't do something active after you've received the threat, I just paused the video. I don't know how or what I did. But if you don't, adulting sucks. Yes, it does, Summer. If you don't utilize the adrenaline and the cortisol that you've released from having a stressor, then all of a sudden it has to go somewhere. So it goes to your liver, which is responsible for processing toxins. It goes to your liver and your kidneys. And then after that, it'll seep out. But the problem is that you have to utilize certain vitamins and minerals to process excess adrenaline and excess cortisol. And over time of doing that 20, 30 times a day for how many years? And maybe that's exaggerated, but you guys get the point. After doing that consistently over and over for years, your sources, so your adrenals become fatigued, your hypothalamus becomes imbalanced, your pituitary will become imbalanced, and then your liver, which is responsible for processing toxins, becomes sluggish because it's had to work so hard for so long that you can't metabolize your fat properly, you can't metabolize your food, and you can't lose weight. So it's not necessarily about excess working out. It's not necessarily about, balls to the wall, CrossFit, Orange Theory, work out as hard as you can, especially if you're in adrenal failure or you've had too much stress because your liver can't process the toxins that you're creating during your workout anyway. So everything becomes more taxed. So let me just refer back to my notes. So the two major minerals and vitamins that your body uses when you're trying to process stress is going to be magnesium and B12. And did I put the other one on here? No, I'm not yet. Okay, I want to make sure I stay on track because I have a tendency to go like way sidetracked. But okay, so magnesium, if you guys are watching, how many of you guys take magnesium or you've heard about the importance of magnesium before? Just, let me know. But magnesium is a natural relaxant and it is responsible for over 300 functions inside our bodies. And so there's all sorts of things that can go wrong, but the most common symptoms of magnesium deficiency are going to be muscle tightness, muscle pain, joint pain. Also, it can cause heart palpitations, it can cause anxiety, irregularity, being constipated. There are so many things about magnesium that we need that become depleted when we're stressed. And so magnesium, B12, B6, and zinc are the crucial vitamins and minerals that you should be taking if you're not already, especially if you're in a stressed out environment. Those are the ones that we are the most deficient in, and I believe that a lot of it is because of stress. Another thing and that's next on my notes. Okay, I'm doing so good. Sorry, I'm usually really scatterbrained, so I have to make sure that I keep my notes. It's like I wrote it or something, right? But the important thing about stress is that when we drink caffeine or alcohol, but caffeine in particular, caffeine is a stimulant. And caffeine will actually increase our energy and increase our stress response. So have you ever had caffeine and you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta go do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta do that. Well, that's your body in like hyper fight or flight mode. And the other thing with caffeine is that also has to be processed through your liver and your kidneys. So if you're drinking a lot of caffeine and you're really stressed, your liver and your kidneys are totally taxed. So it's no wonder why you can't lose weight, and it's no wonder why you can't break down your toxins. And then also, anytime you're drinking caffeine, you're utilizing magnesium and B12 to process the caffeine from your liver and your kidneys anyway. So it's all connected. And I think that part of the problem is that, when that cycle of fatigue comes in, Anna, breastfeeding affect the fight or flight response? Is that what you're asking? The HPA? Just shoot me, I know that the comments are delayed, but I'll try to get to it. But another thing, when you constantly are, fatigued or you're tired or you're adrenal fatigue because you've got to that point of adrenal fatigue or you've got to this point of this mystery illness that you're experiencing, you feel like you have to have caffeine because you're so tired. And I did this for years. I was in adrenal fatigue probably for a year and I didn't even know, but I was drinking, like I said yesterday, 600 to 700 milligrams. I would have a quad shot latte in the morning and a Red Bull in the afternoon. And I know the latte had 600, I think, so like 900 milligrams of caffeine a day just to get by. And I still had to take a nap every afternoon. I would come home from work, I would take a nap, I would go back to work for my 4-hour night shift, and then I would come back home and still have to do all the house chores and stuff. So Anna, to answer your question, I haven't actually looked into how breastfeeding affects the HPA axis. I can only imagine that it's just adding one more thing on top of your body and what your body has to process, but I'll look into that because I wasn't actually able to breastfeed, so I haven't done a ton of research, but I'll look into it and I'll post a video about it when I find out the answer. So the problem is that we live in this fight or flight state. We live in this constant, survival mode, and all of these mechanisms inside our body are becoming depleted because we don't have the capability to keep up. And so here's the way that it was explained to me, and I think that this is probably the best visual that I had ever received. But let's just say you own an orange grove and it's 300 acres, okay, and you hire a team to come every morning and pick your orange groves, pick your oranges. And they work from 5 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day, and you give them a lunch break, and they're good, and they're happy, they're making money, you're getting, your work done. And then eventually you say, okay, well, there's a higher demand, so I'm going to make you guys work more, but I'm not going to pay you more, I'm going to make you work more. So you're going to work from 5 to 5 now, and I'm going to take your lunch break away. Okay, well, they're going to be a little pissed off, and they're going to do it, right? They're going to do what they have to do because they need that paycheck. And then there's a higher demand, so you're going to continue to increase their workload, but you're not going to pay them, and you're not going to give them any food, you're not going to give them a lunch break, you're just going to make them work. Eventually, they're working 24 hours a day. And what do you think they're going to do after a little while? They're going to fucking quit. They're going to say, screw you, I'm not working for you anymore, I'm done, okay? Well, your adrenals are kind of the same way, and your hypothalamus is kind of the same way. When you're a child, things are good, you use them, and they're there for you, and they're working perfect, and they're there when you need them, and everything's good, right? And then all of a sudden you're a teenager and you start utilizing them more, and they're like, okay, we can do this, we can keep up with this, okay. And then all of a sudden you're an adult and all shit hits the fan, and all of a sudden they are working overtime and overtime. And then you're like, okay, well now we're gonna start doing CrossFit, and now we're gonna start trying to lose weight, so I'm gonna make you work even harder than you were before. And you push them and push them and push them. Eventually, what are they going to do? They're going to quit, right? They're going to say, screw you, I'm not doing this anymore. So it's no wonder why you can't lose weight. And when you are experiencing that stress response, sorry, I just had to check the time. When you're experiencing that stress response on a regular basis, they're eventually just going to give up on you. And adding to that stressor of, making them try to work harder so that you can lose weight, or working out excessively to increase the cortisol and increase the adrenaline production when you're already taxed and you're already in adrenal fatigue, none of that makes any sense because your body is already crashing and it's already fatigued, and busting your ass in the gym and making it work harder is not serving you in any way, shape, or form. I promise you, I've done it, I've been there, I've tried it, and my body just totally shut down. Screw you, I'm done. I'm not working for you any longer. And so, Alexis, you just missed the awesome orange grove analogy, but you can go back and watch it later, and I've got about 10 more minutes. So with all of that said, I want to talk about the parasympathetic versus the sympathetic nervous system. Now, this goes back to anatomy and physiology, biology. Maybe in high school you guys learned about it, but you didn't really pay much attention. So I'm going to break it down super simple for you. You have your parasympathetic, which is your good, they call it feed and breed or rest and digest. Then you have your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight response. Now, your sympathetic nervous system is only designed to function when you need survival mode. So chased by a lion, sympathetic kicks in, parasympathetic shuts down. Eventually, homeostasis will kick in, and you'll be back in your parasympathetic nervous system. Now, unfortunately, because of the life we live, we drink a lot of caffeine, we're always on the go, we're always in survival mode. We live mostly in a sympathetic dominant state. Now, our sympathetic nervous system shuts down digestion, okay? Shuts down digestion, shuts down your immune system, increases your heart rate, increases your blood pressure, constricts your blood vessels, dilates your bronchioles, and I'm missing one. Why am I missing one? Dang it. I'm missing one. Oh, and it's also responsible for negative emotions. So fear, anger, worry, greed, selfishness. All these negative emotions kick in when you're in a sympathetic nervous system state. Who wants to live here like 24 hours a day? Freaking nobody. But the problem is that when we are in this fight or flight state, and all we can do is just survive, when it's time to go to bed, we can't kick into that parasympathetic nervous system state because we're so revved up from the day, unless you do some sort of like bedtime routine. And so the problem is that if you become sympathetic dominant, the parasympathetic, which is responsible for digestion, regeneration, your sex drive, all these positive emotions, your parasympathetic can't kick in because your sympathetic is taken over. So one of the things in biofeedback that we can do is we can test your parasympathetic nervous system to see how well you respond to that balancing. And if it only goes to 2%, then we know that you're definitely stressed and we need to work on the HPA. So if you're constantly in that sympathetic nervous system state, you're going to have fear, worry, anger, greed, selfishness, all of those negative emotions, worry, filtering through your body on a daily basis, flushing all throughout your body all the time. You're going to lose your sex drive. Your digestion is going to shut off. You're probably going to be sick more often. And it's not awesome. It's not awesome. There's nothing positive unless you are utilizing that fight or flight response. There's nothing awesome about it. And so the problem is that if we continue to live in this sympathetic dominant state, it creates free radicals. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of free radicals, but I envision them like Pac-Man. So if Pac-Man was a bad guy and all the little dots were your cells, he just comes along and he breaks down all those little cells in your body. And that's why that's why people, like, have you ever seen somebody that looks like they aged 10 years in a year because they were under so much stress? You have hair cells, you have brain cells, you have skin cells, you have kidney cells, you have liver cells, you have heart cells. And stress creates free radicals, and these free radicals will actually eat away at every cell in your body, which is why stress is responsible for 90% of illness and disease. So when that little Pac-Man, when those free radicals are eating away at those cells, how do we rebuild them? How do we restore them? Well, there's a couple options for that, and I'll share it with you probably in the end on Friday, a supplement that I take that helps to reduce oxidative stress. But the reality of it is we have to feed our body with healthy foods, and this is why I'm a firm believer in meditation, because meditation stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system. Meditation and deep belly breathing does as well. So if you're familiar with deep belly breathing, you understand that your breath should be taken from the diaphragm and expelled through the diaphragm. So typically when we are stressed, we use our secondary breathing muscles, which is our chest and our neck muscles. Now it looks like this. These are our secondary breathing muscles. Now you can stand in the mirror and you can see how you breathe, but the reality of it is this is wrong. This is bad for you. Ever carry tension in your neck or your traps or anything? The way that you should be breathing when you're calm is through your diaphragm. Now, I don't know if you guys, I can't turn my camera down anymore, but I'm gonna turn sideways for you so that you can see this. So I want you to put your hands on your diaphragm, and as you breathe, your diaphragm should expand and your hands should go out. So it's gonna look like this. Now, I know it sounds super simple and kind of silly. However, if you are in a sympathetic dominant state, you probably won't be able to breathe with your diaphragm at first. It takes time, it takes training. It's just like doing a lunge. If you start out doing a lunge and you can't, and you're wobbly and you're weak, it's because you need practice. And so practice makes perfect. Now, that deep belly breathing does a couple things. It obviously retrains your brain to start utilizing your diaphragm for breath, but it also stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system. So if you ever find yourself in a fight or flight state, or if you ever find yourself in a place where you're really anxious or you're really scared, or you find yourself being really angry, sitting down for 5 minutes doing deep belly breathing will actually stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system and help to calm your nerves. So That's the assignment for today. I want you guys all to try sometime today or tomorrow before the next assignment. I want you all to try deep belly breathing for 5 to 10 minutes. You can do it in your car, you can do it at work, you can do it while you're doing the dishes. It doesn't matter where you are. This is when I teach people meditation techniques. This is the first thing that we start with, is learning how to breathe properly. So you're going to breathe in your nose for 4 to 7 seconds. Now, 4 seconds might be tough for some people. 7 seconds might be tough for some people. And then you're going to breathe out for 7 seconds as well. So deep breath in your nose, out your mouth, and 7 seconds in, 7 seconds out, if you can get to that. And I want you guys to share your results with me too, because I want to see what you can actually get to. And don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's 1, 2. And you can do Mississippi or alligators, whatever you want to do. Hippopotamus, 1 hippopotamus, 2 hippopotamus. But just make sure that you're counting your breath. And what that does is it calms the mind, brings your attention only to your breath, so you're not thinking or worrying about anything else, and it stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is really, really helpful and really healing. So that's your assignment for day 2, and I want you guys to try that and let me know how it is. And then next video is silent killer number 2, and this is going to get into all the good stuff. This is where we're going to get into fibromyalgia, autoimmune disorders, not necessarily digestion issues, but anxiety, depression, confusion, numbness and tingling, autoimmune disorders, forgetfulness, brain fog, stuff like that. So that's going to be tomorrow's video, and you won't want to miss that. I haven't decided if it's going to be earlier or later in the morning. I think it might be close to 11. But that's going to be tomorrow. And then we're also going to just review the timeline tomorrow as well. And I'll have you guys share your experiences. Did anybody in here do the timeline? I'm curious to see if you did the timeline, if it was overwhelming, if it was kind of sad. Shoot me a message and let me know what experiences you had with that timeline. It was really emotional for me. I didn't think that it would be, but it was. It was kind of a trip. So anyway, I hope that you guys learned a lot from this. I literally could talk about this stuff for hours. You're welcome, Summer. I could literally talk about this stuff for hours. This is one of my favorite things to do. And I do offer a 30-minute calming anti-anxiety session with biofeedback. There's no testing, so it's not going to be as fun. It's not going to be as fun as like some of the emotional and chakra testing stuff. However, it is very, very calming, and we do all those in distance. So it's 30 minutes. It's $75. But if you want to experience it or kind of see how your HPA axis and your parasympathetic nervous system condition is, that's a good way of doing it. So I hope that this helped you guys. I love you all, and I look forward to tomorrow's video. Tomorrow's a big one, so hope to see you guys all there. Okay, bye.